Chapter 6. I had barely fallen asleep when I was startled by the ringing of the telephone. It took a couple of sharp shakes to realize where I was. Corey stirred enough to mumble some appreciation that I had already set up the phone. I felt guilty, knowing I didn't deserve the credit. I fumbled for the flashlight, clicked the switch, and discovered the battery had given its last watts to the frozen water pipes. Pulling myself up, I was hit by a blast of cold air and crawled back into the warmth, hoping the ringing would stop. It didn't. Who could be calling at this time of night, or was it morning? Corey grumbled, "Answer the phone." I forced myself out again, stepping gingerly over the mound of blankets and bodies. Freya groaned, Eric moaned, Jingle Bells whimpered, Sig snored on. I finally found the cord and traced it to the receiver. "Hello?" I waited for a response, only to hear a click. "Ufda," I muttered, heading back through the tangle of bodies. I was 2 winks away from sleep when the phone rang again. Determined not to answer it, I lay there stubbornly as it kept ringing. Everyone groaned. Corey muttered, "Answer the phone." Reluctantly, I repeated my well-worn path across the mattresses. "Hello?" I recognized the voice immediately. "Is Freya there?" the caller asked. I fought the urge to bang the receiver down, but the voice was apologetic. "I called before and thought I had the wrong number, so I hung up." I crawled across to Freya, handed her the phone, and then crawled back to bed. A moment later, she banged the receiver down and groaned. "That was Dale. No school today." I had a hard time calming down. Should I feel thankful for the information or perturbed by the timing? Snuggling back into the warmth, I thought I could finally sleep on into eternity, until the phone rang again. I resolved not to get up, but it kept ringing. Corey broke my resolve. "Somebody answer the damn phone." I dragged myself across the mattresses once more, wondering how everyone but me managed to sleep through this. A voice came through the receiver. "Is Sig there?" Steeling myself, I shook Sig a dozen times, handed him the phone, and crawled back to bed. Before I could settle, Sig announced, "That was Sally. There's no school today." Everybody groaned and went back to sleep, except me. Wide awake, I banged on the heater. Not that I expected more heat. It was already cranked to 10, but I felt there must be some ritual to perform. Then I put water on for the oatmeal mush. The morning was spent juggling packing boxes. Corey and the boys made a couple of trips into town. Freya and I arranged furniture, filled drawers, cupboards, and our single closet. The next day was much the same. Except on their last trip back, they brought our skis. Corey said, "Yeah, the snow looks perfect. Get on your ski clothes." I wasn't in the mood. I had a ton of things to do, but I felt the need to compensate for getting my family into this situation. I went in search of my ski pants, hoping the clean your plate syndrome that plagued American children of my generation hadn't interfered with their fit, but I couldn't find them. So I pulled on my warmest house dress, ski jacket, and bright red knee socks over the legs of my long johns. When I arrived in the backyard, Corey's expression confirmed my fears. "Just hope nobody sees you." Freya and Sig were already climbing the hill. Corey was helping Eric with his little red skis, hand-me-downs Corey had bought for Freya when she was 4. He'd said it was the custom in Norway to buy skis for a boy on his 4th birthday, and he didn't see why his daughter should be treated any differently. I followed Corey up the hill. He was wearing the Norwegian ski sweater I'd knitted for him, a pattern of white snowflakes on a black background. I'd promised it the day he gave me an engagement ring, despite my only knitting experience being a scarf. Not knowing the complications, I'd worked out an intricate pattern on squared paper and set to work. It had taken years to finish. At the top of the field, Corey warned us, "Don't get near the electric fence. It runs along the bottom of the field." It sounded alarming. "What's electric fence?" Eric asked. Corey pointed to the single wire strung along the fence posts. "How can that puny wire keep cows in?" Sig asked. "If a cow gets its nose up to the wire, it'll get shocked." What's shocked? This was a subject for Corey. He had studied electricity when he worked for General Electric, his first job in America after he had been forced to leave high school due to the needs of his family. He had often explained concepts like watts and amps to me, but I never felt any need for such information. I simply left the buying of light bulbs to him. "Well, did you ever put your finger in a light socket?" Corey asked. We all shuddered, and the kids took off down the hill. I wasn't concerned about Freya and Sig. They were both experienced skiers and knew how to turn or stop. But watching little Eric pointing his skis straight down, driven by his do-or-die spirit to keep up, had me biting my fingernails. We watched as they arrived at the bottom of the hill. As expected, Freya and Sig managed to turn, but it looked like Eric was heading straight for the fence. Then he went head over heels. When he didn't start screaming, I figured he hadn't made contact with the fence. Freya helped him up, and they all started back up the hill. I breathed a big sigh of relief. "You're just like my mother," Corey said. "As long as I just walked around on skis, she didn't worry. But when Father built me a ski jump, she prophesied that I'd fall on my head and kill myself. That's what mothers are for, to worry about their kids and expect the worst. And if I remember the story, the first thing you did was fall on your head." "Yeah, fortunately I just knocked myself out, which unfortunately sent Mother into labor. Which, unfortunately, brought the stork. Which unfortunately brought a new baby sister I didn't want. Which unfortunately canceled my ski jumping career until I went to school, where, fortunately, they had a ski jump on the school grounds." I'd heard the story before, and I knew how it went from there. How Corey's father took him to the big jumping hills in town to compete with the other boys from the area schools. About once a year, he'd take him on the bus to the biggest jump this side of heaven, or so Corey described it, where the big champions from all over Norway came to compete. When his father moved the family to Duluth, Minnesota, they had a good ski hill near their home. Later, when Corey moved to Oregon in his early 20s, he and several Norwegian friends began skiing at Mount Hood. Together, they formed the Cascade Ski Club, now one of the oldest in the country, built a large regulation ski jump, and held a dedication tournament, which Corey won. Every year, Corey held some office in the ski club, including president in the second year. Finally, he took on the job of tournament chairman, a role he held for years. The sun came out, and Corey pointed toward Mount Hood, gleaming against the blue sky. "Sure wish we had this view from the dining room." "Maybe someday you'll build me a nice big house, just like the Holgate house, with the dining room on this side," I said. "Yeah, someday I'll do that. The only problem is, if we built right here, on the highest point, it would be right in the pathway for our neighbors to back their cars into our back door." "Yeah, why would anyone build a house so close to the property line when they've got 12 acres, for gosh sakes?" It was a question we would wonder about for years. Corey estimated, "Yeah, if I had a Norwegian spruce tree right here, which would sure be nice, and if I cut it down, which I hope I'd never do, the top of it would smash in the roof of our neighbor's house." We laughed at that. Of course, this was before we really knew our neighbors. The kids were back up the hill, so we all pointed our skis downhill together. How wonderful it was to be on skis again, on our very own hill. The sun made bright crystals of everything, everywhere. The temperature was far below freezing, and the snow was fast. Corey beat me to the electric fence and with a neat turn, came to a stop. My turn was more like a helicopter, coat and house dress swirling overhead. I missed the fence by a fraction of an inch. Corey looked alarmed. So did the kids, but I assured them, "Don't worry, I've never hit an electric fence in all my days of skiing."